So, as you know, very often I talk about what I think are interesting concepts about our lives and the psychology behind what we do and how we think. Those talks are generally quite easy to follow, and I try to make my presentations as interesting and original as I can, all within the bounds of being able to keep your attention through the disbursement of information you might not have obtained up to now. Occasionally, however, I bring to bear a subject of extreme complication which demands all your attentive powers, because the subject matter is so terribly important for you to understand. Today is one of those days. I need your full attention to this. It's going to last about 10 or 15 minutes, but it's actually so complicated that I don't even know if I can explain it in a coherent way which will allow you to understand first time around. You might have to listen 2 or 3 times, but I'm going to do my best. And so anyway, here goes. We are going to be talking in detail about the financial problems in Europe and why they are so dire and why they are insoluble and will be responsible for a total global breakdown, and why, frankly, it is absolute and utter madness for people to be still bidding the stock markets up ever higher. This is going to end terribly, terribly badly, and very soon. So here we go. There is a concept known as Target 2. Now, Target 2 stands for Trans-European Automated Real-Time Gross Settlement System. Awful, isn't it? Anyway, it's a reflection of capital flight from the Club Med countries in southern Europe, countries like Greece, Spain, Italy and Portugal, to banks in northern Europe. Here's an easy-to-understand example. Spain imports German goods, but no Spanish goods or capital have been acquired by any private party in Germany in return. The only thing that has been acquired is an IOU issued by the Spanish Commercial Bank to the Bank of Spain in return for funding the payment. Target 2 is also a measure of capital flight. The Italian banking system is effectively bankrupt, and outflows from Italy have been picking up. Here's another example of Target 2. If a Greek depositor sends money to a foreign bank, say a German bank, that bank now has additional deposits. To the extent it doesn't want to recycle them, in the past it may have used them to buy Greek government bonds, it deposits them with an NCB, or a national central bank. In this case, the Bundesbank, Germany's central bank. Target claims are created because the Greek bank that loses deposits gets funding via the European Central Bank's ELA, which is the Emergency Liquidity Assistance Programme. Simply put, the ECB, or the European Central Bank, sends money to the Bank of Greece in a kind of open credit line to make up for the cash that left the Greek bank. There are some restrictions, but not many. This is not a major problem unless Greece changes currencies or defaults. If it does so, Greece will pay the credit line with drachmas, that's the Greek currency that was replaced by the euros. So it'll repay the Greek credit line with drachmas, not euros. Or, if the radical left had one, perhaps not at all. This is precisely one of the things that had everyone excited. Germany is responsible for its share of any such losses at the ECB according to its percentage in the EMU, the European Monetary Union, roughly 27%. France, Italy and Spain are next in line to take losses. The Netherlands would be responsible for about 5.7% of any Target 2 losses associated with a Greek default, whether the money is sitting in German banks, Austrian banks, Dutch banks, etc. If Spain leaves, its 11.9% will be reallocated to the other countries. Of the 6 countries with the highest balances, only 4 are positive: Germany, Luxembourg, the Netherlands and Finland. As far back as 2012, the 6 largest deficit countries owed a collective €797.3 billion to the 4 creditor countries. The ECB itself was and remains in hock for another €133.5 billion of those amounts. Monetary policy can help external balances, but it cannot fix internal Target 2 balances. Every country in the Eurozone is stuck with the euro and the ECB's interest rates, whether it makes any sense or not. And it doesn't. Rates suitable for Germany were not suitable for Spain, Ireland, Greece, and many other countries. An enormous property bubble in Spain and Ireland was the result. These numbers I've just quoted are the most current, posted on the ECB's website, updated last September the 1st, for the period ending July the 31st. They are not current. I presume on purpose. On September the 7th last year, Zero Hedge posted Italy funding Target 2 liabilities expectedly soar to record high, was the title. Bank of Italy's liabilities towards other Eurozone nations soared by €35 billion in August, just shy of the biggest monthly increase on record, and reached an all-time high of €327 billion, surpassing the previous records set in 2012, just prior to Draghi's infamous "whatever it takes" speech. In July, the Bank of Italy said that the recent increase in its Target 2 position was driven by foreigners selling Italian assets, especially bonds, and Italians buying foreign assets, movements which were only partially offset by Italian banks raising more funds on international markets. In August, this trend accelerated dramatically, prompting questions about just how dire the true state of Italy's banks is. Prime Minister Matteo Renzi is desperate to come up with a solution other than a bail-in of depositors, but schemes to date have been laughable. There are several $100 billion in non-performing loans at Italian banks, on top of all the above messes we have been discussing. I expect capital controls or depositor bail-ins at some point. With that, let's return to a discussion of ELA, the Emergency Liquidity Assistance Programme that I just mentioned. The first rule of ELA is you don't talk about ELA. Quoting David Owen, Chief European Economist at Jefferies Securities International in London, the lack of transparency is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it increases uncertainty, but at the same time we do not necessarily want to know how bad things are, as it can add fuel to the fire. End of quote. The ECB buries information about ELA in its weekly financial statement. While it announced on April the 24th that it was harmonising the disclosure of ELA on the Eurosystem's balance sheet, under other claims on euro area credit institutions, this item contains more than just ELA. It stood at 212.5 billion euros last week, up from 184.7 billion euros 3 weeks ago. The ECB has declined to divulge how much of the amount is accounted for by ELA. Quoting Owen, ELA is a symptom of the strain in the system, and Greece is the tip of the iceberg here. As concerns mount about breakup, that sparks deposit flight. Suddenly, we're talking about 350 billion, 400 billion as bigger countries avail of ELA. End of quote. For Citigroup chief economist Wilhelm Beuter, there's a bigger issue at stake. Quote, ELA breaks a key rule that is designed to bind the monetary union together. It constitutes a breach of the principle of one monetary, credit and liquidity policy on uniform terms and conditions for the whole euro system. The existence of ELA undermines the monetary union. End of quote. The key sentence is the last one. The existence of ELA undermines the monetary union. That explains why they want to keep it a secret. Now, think back to what I said at the beginning about Target 2. Let's hear what Wolfgang Schäuble, the German Minister of Finance, had to say about Germany's credit surplus, that which happens when the weak countries buy German exports and can't pay, so have to leave an IOU in promise of payment. Quote unquote. Even before the European Central Bank decided its policies of unusual monetary policy, which also led to the euro exchange rate falling significantly, I said that we will increase German export surplus. Germany cannot possibly collect on what it's owed in undiluted euros, but it seeks even bigger surpluses? What utter lunacy! It's one thing to defend the existing surplus by pretending to believe that it was not caused by income distortions at home, but rather by foreign laziness. But to say that it's German policy to grow the surplus further is outrageous. Now that they have bankrupted Europe and developing countries are in trouble, who but the US can possibly be forced into absorbing it? When the US finally decides that it cannot continue absorbing everyone else's deficient demand at the expense of becoming more like peripheral Europe, the consequences for Germany and China and Japan will be devastating. There are only 3 possible paths at this point. 1. Germany and the creditor nations forgive enough debt for Europe to grow. 2. Permanent high unemployment and slow growth in Spain, Greece, Italy, with stagnation elsewhere in Europe. 3. Breakup of the Eurozone. Germany will not allow number 1. We just heard what the finance minister had to say. It's unreasonable to expect number 2 to last forever. The only door left open is door number 3, the breakup of the Eurozone. The best move would be for Germany to leave the Eurozone. Germany is in the best shape to suffer the consequences. Unfortunately, the most likely outcome is a destructive breakup of the Eurozone starting in Italy or Greece. German Target 2 imbalances exceed levels hit in the Eurozone crises in 2012. Finally, note that Italy is on European Central Bank life support. Should Draghi, the President of the European Central Bank, halt QE or quantitative easing asset purchases, demand for Italian bonds will plunge. Vast liabilities are being switched quietly from private banks and investment funds onto the shoulders of taxpayers across southern Europe. It is a variant of the tragic episode in Greece, but this time on a far larger scale and with systemic global implications. There has been no democratic decision by any parliament to take on these fiscal debts, rapidly approaching €1 trillion. They are the side effect of quantitative easing by the European Central Bank, which has degenerated into a conduit for capital flight from the Club Med bloc to Germany, Luxembourg and the Netherlands. This socialization of risk is happening by stealth, a mechanical effect of the ECB's Target 2 payments system. If a political upset in France or Italy triggers an existential euro crisis over coming months, citizens from both the Eurozone's debtor and creditor countries will discover to their horror what has been done to them. The banking cartel continues to inflict and profit from crimes against humanity. Those of us who understand what has been happening are horrified and sickened, but we're also wondering how this dark chapter will end once the masses realize how brazenly they've been robbed and abused.